Should you spray and pray, or is less more in the content creation world? That's the question I asked Ryan Darani, SEO consultant, well respected out of the UK. Also works with a lot of US clients on exactly that thing. We each have some strong opinions about which is right here, but we're also not completely misguided and talk through when publishing high volume does make sense for your business and when a less equals more approach is likely going to drive the most returns for you long term. So it was a fun conversation with Ryan where we dug into everything content volume and really how much you might need to publish to be successful with the most consistency. So enjoy the chat. So one thing you and I kind of interacted with on LinkedIn, I believe, maybe it was on Twitter. There's a little bit of back and forth about some public case studies that were done about Monday and Asana. And not to, I feel bad that Monday continually gets called out about this, but they published a good amount of content. And it's not independent to them. There's a lot of people out there that are publishing a high volume, and we seem to have similar opinions. We'll find out through this podcast how similar, just whether or not that's a good thing or not. So starting there at a wider question or a thought, maybe it relates to that case study in some way. How much content do you think people should publish? It seems to be that a common question, like what should I publish? Is there any frameworks for that? How should people think about that?
Yeah, I did see the case study. I thought it definitely unearthed some of the maybe behind the scenes of what goes into a strategy that big. And it definitely prompted a lot of, should I be doing this? Is this the right method? And there was a little kind of counter argument on Twitter that I saw that had a really good in-depth look at actually the opposite of this strategy, which is, you know, better targeted, better linked to pieces of content can be just as effective. And in my view, I don't believe the publishing frequency should be the biggest concern. It should be the strategy and the keywords that underpin it, because it's great publishing 500 keywords in or 500 articles in a month. But if 2% of those generate any traffic, you're doing a bad job. So I definitely feel like the benchmark shouldn't be how quickly should I publish or how much should I publish. It's how much can I get out of the few articles that I am publishing, and do they convert for me?
You made me think of a side question, and I have the feeling I know your answer, but just to kind of state it for people who might not know the answer, you've probably been asked before, should I publish a certain number per week? Does that matter? Do I have, like, does showing Google I post fresh stuff like make an impact on my search rankings? Like, what would your experience be there?
Yeah, for sure. Publishing fresh content and staying up to date on your website isn't a bad thing. I don't believe there is a particular cadence that people have to kind of follow to reach that level of freshness. You know, in some industries, publishing 5 articles a month that are really in depth, really well researched, that give businesses the ability to go out and generate links is going to be enough to kind of sustain their position in the results page. And then the kind of the opposite end of that spectrum is it's a brand new site. They're trying to get content onto the site as quickly as possible. So the question is, how much do I need to publish before Google starts to index and rank my site? And that's something I come across a lot. And again, there shouldn't be this kind of hurry to get indexed by Google or ranked by Google. Let it do its thing naturally. Don't set a cadence, but instead look at how much content your competitors have and kind of reverse engineer how long it's going to take you to do that. But cherry pick the articles you could rank for quickly. And that should give you a pretty solid number.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think there's any specific connection of like you have to publish X a week. For sure, freshness matters. You want your content to be up to date, but that it specifically correlates to number of articles per week seems pretty unlikely. Of course, it's kind of hard to structure test for that specifically, but from at least what I've seen, it doesn't seem to have a direct connection, and our recommendation is exactly like yours. Like, it's better to have 5 really good articles rather than we should be publishing 3 times a week just for the sake of it, that nobody reads that content.
No, exactly. Yeah, I think that should be more widely adopted, and that's why I think this is so good to connect with you because we see so eye to eye on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. We should probably address some of the case, or at least like the counter arguments to that Monday approach. One of the things that I saw people mention about why they publish so many articles, and for sure they generate a ton of traffic and traffic value, I would guess, from that, is they're essentially blitz scaling, gonna go public, trying to capture the market really quickly. So that was some of the counter argument I saw to that. Do you have any thoughts on some of, yeah, what's your reaction in hearing that?
I do understand, like, there are positions where companies need to scale fast and they need to prove maybe a proof of concept to potentially investors or members of the board that, hey, this channel works. It can be an acquisition channel for us. The thing that I found is as that progresses and you've kind of, and we see it time and time again, you have that real nice, sharp spike in traffic in the first, say, 3 to 6 months. You publish in aggressively, traffic looks good, you can pitch it to the board, they buy in. But then when that traffic starts to come down or plateau, you have two options. You have publish more content and hope that traffic goes back up, or you now have to go back through all of your 600 articles, refresh them, trim them, cut them, redirect. And that is going to be a difficult conversation to have to somebody who first bought in on the concept that content frequency or publishing more content is the way to grow SEO as an acquisition channel.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I think one of the issues with their thought process is by some nature just saturating a lot of this traffic was beneficial. When you look at the Sana data, they scaled as well, and you can still scale quality. Maybe it's less articles, but it seemed like the data showed, and we can show some overlays and link in the show notes, like they generated more traffic. So by nature, just publishing for the sake of it. And I would guess like maybe you can capture rankings when you're really high authority as well, but the resonance, the conversion rate of those rankings are going to be worse also on that front end. Of course, I don't have much experience putting up a lot of low quality content. I shouldn't say low quality, middle quality content like that, but that's some of at least what I've seen.
No, no, I agree. It's you're managing such a huge pool of content at that stage. So your awareness and your I guess attention gets spread very thin. So you might not recognize in the data that a group of pages are actually performing the best, and that's where your conversion effort should be focused because you're so drawn into, hey, let's just continue to publish as much as we can. We will take a kind of view of this in 6 months, and you've missed out on potentially hundreds, if not thousands, of conversions at that point.
For sure. And I mean that's a good like negative of that approach. Are there any other negatives that people might not understand as it comes to like really publishing quickly a lot of high volume, maybe low quality content?
Yeah, I mean, you have to look at it, at least in my experience, where I have to have, or I've had these conversations with clients in the past, is that the resource or the initial investment to do something like this is huge, even though it's not potentially the best level of content you could get access to. If you're publishing 500 articles, 600 articles, if you were to say get a reasonably priced article, let's say 80 to $100, you're looking at a significant investment upfront for something that might not sustain itself longer than 12 months. And again, you've got this kind of process of finding content writers or good content writers, and you have to kind of weed through some of the potentially AI content and things that are duplicate or have been scraped, because that's just part and parcel of a good content campaign. Like, you have to go through these teething problems. Um, so once you've got through all of that and the content's live, you then might potentially have to find a batch of editors to go back and update that content, add new internal links, update the CTAs, personalize it. It gets really resource intensive. So I think people need to really get to grips with an 18-month, 24-month timeline where they might have to go back and reinvest money. It's not just we're going to put 60K in and that's that. You have to kind of think about the long-term reinvestment.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing, especially as the world gets more mature. It's like a next level to SEO where, of course, we originally battle against the direct response nature of PPC. And we know SEO is a long term thing, but like a next level on top of that is we're not just publishing, we have to think about the future of this content too. That's like the next level of maturity and sophistication is not just putting something live. And of course, a lot of content vendors, people that get hired, their incentives are just create the content. It's not create a 3 year, 4 year entrenched ranking. Generally, of course, they'd like to retain that work, but I guess not many people, unfortunately, are thinking that far out. And ironically, SEO becomes more of a short term game, even though we definitely shouldn't be from from what I've seen. Yeah.
Yeah, no, agreed. Definitely agreed with that. And in some cases, you wouldn't expect a content writer to think like that. That's really our job to guide that and guide the brands and companies in the right direction to say, it's very well publishing all of this right now, but think about how this matures, how we're going to repurpose it, how can we leverage it differently. These are the conversations that I think good SEOs and good agencies will have with their clients to kind of balance that real need or desire to publish so aggressively.
Something I've noticed recently, and I've just been working with it literally this week with our team, is there's a natural incentive to focus on net new content. It's like
Hmm.
it's kind of sexy to publish something new and not update content. And we've done content updates, but never. I feel like the emphasis of just at a certain point, you almost all of your effort could be spent on updating content.
Hmm.
But we continue to have that intuition of like the new shiny thing, and I don't think people necessarily weigh that accordingly. And also that relates to the front end too, as you were saying, like you're just not thinking that far out. How do I keep this updated? How much time is it going to take me to update this? Like we've occasionally had issue of like we put a lot of uh, years and data points on images. That's hard to update and like things
Yeah.
like that. And it's just like it takes a next extra level of sophistication, but it's like different levels of like beginner, advanced. Beginners like publish a lot of low quality, high volume that's going to hit you in 12 months. Medium is like deep, good content, hard to update. Advanced, good content, easy to update. Um,
Yeah.
Things like that. Yeah.
And I know you guys are like big proponents of that, right? Building out systems and ways that you can refresh this level of content without it being too much of a resource intensive task. So I think you guys have definitely got something special if you've managed to crack that code for sure.
It's iterative. I shouldn't say we have it perfect, but yeah, you realize these things as we look under the hood. We look at our legacy clients, and I look at the trends and things like that. We work on those processes for sure. But I know there is a balance. We're definitely a high quality firm, but within that, we always have to balance the tension of you shouldn't spend a whole month on an asset if it's not going to generate ROI for you. So,
Yeah.
in talking with clients, how should they decide between maybe a low volume, high quality approach, or maybe it's mid quality, mid volume? Like, how do you walk that balance and have those conversations with clients?
It's a very good question. And it's normally driven by, again, it's resource and budget. Like the cost of producing a piece of content that is going to be an asset for a long time, something that you can generate links from, something that will fit nicely into your conversion funnel is expensive and will take, like you said, takes a little while to produce. So in a lot of cases, I will pick out, and this is where maybe I'm different to other SEOs, but similar to you, is that I will pick out pillar pages that I know are going to need that level of investment because they're probably either directly related to a product or a service purchase, or they're the next layer down. So the thing that is going to facilitate that conversion. And I'll pick maybe four, maybe five of those pages and kind of dedicate a sprint to building those out. Naturally, that's not going to take up all of the budget. That's not going to take up all of my time. So then we have to look at what other layers of content can we introduce to support that layer up. And and you see it with things where I think FreshBooks was a good example where they did invoice templates for X, or invoice software for X. Of course, you can verticalize your content strategy and get a ton of content out of it. And it doesn't have to be incredibly high quality every single time, because it doesn't, in all cases, warrant it. So there is definitely a nice balance between what budget do you have to allocate to this entire campaign? What are your core pillar pages that are going to make you the most money? Let's build those out. Those are going to be the things that sustain rankings for, the next 12 to 18 months. And then how can we make sure that the content beneath it is still a good enough quality that we can still prop up traffic elsewhere?
I like that. It sort of similar to what we recommend to clients, but stated differently. We have a lot of design and development in house, and we'll generally say you should create the high fidelity work with us. And then sometimes there's definitely room for more scaled, still quality approaches. Maybe you should do that internally. It takes maybe just writing sometimes, not all the other things, and it's a decent way of framing it is like that different approach.
Yeah.
And like we also like thinking like, what is the minimum effective dose to rank for this thing? And
Hmm.
sometimes if you are FreshBooks is pretty well known. If you're like a big brand like Asana, those are competitive verticals, but sometimes for them they might not need something interactive or whatever just to rank because they got the product, and that's way more sustainable anyways than like going super skyscraper, which is not the always. People misapplied that approach and probably did super quality, and then they forgot their whole website was bad. And that was kind of like the balance was off a little bit, right?
Yeah, no, I hear that for sure. And I think you made a brilliant point, is that, and this is where sometimes again, these are conversations I have with clients, and maybe SEOs who are just kind of getting into or finding their feet, is that they try to replicate the success of other bigger authority brands, where they're leveraging the power of their link profile to produce mediocre, average to mediocre quality content, and they can get away with it. Whereas a smaller domain, less authority, less links, it's going to be that play of let's produce something fantastic, something magnificent to generate links so we can at least start to compete at some point with these bigger guys. So yeah, that was an excellent point.
And you're saying you don't like that last approach, just for clarity, or what you're saying is, or you do like that approach?
I like that approach.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense. I find I do think it can definitely make up for it ranking by going super big. I sometimes worry about it being too sustainable,
Hmm.
or maybe the product. And I think we talked about keyword difficulty. That's increasingly a part of our, like, for those scrappier startups we're working with, like keyword difficulty is like the whole is a huge part of it, of course, in connection to quality. But we can go big on important topics as well. But I think you have to be cognizant of doing that too. I've seen skyscraper assets, and also they ironically don't match SERP intent a lot of the time if they're trying to rank. If you're not just doing links, but as you've probably seen, or at least I've seen, like Google is almost like preferencing some shorter mid form, like 1,000, 1,500 words. Seems to, I think Brian Dean's ironically study on the fact on showed that was the average length of content that ranked these days.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you see different. Yeah.
No, I think some of the verticals that I work in is the update that happened around August, September last year, where people were just losing featured snippets overnight. That really showed a shift in intent. Like, shorter, snappy answers were the thing yesterday, and now all of a sudden you want long form content, and then it can revert back very quickly to, we need a 200-word answer, a summary right at the top that gives the audience exactly what they need, and then maybe like 1,000 words just unpacking some FAQs. Like, one thing that people sometimes overlook, because content strategies are inherently quite detailed and a lengthy process to build out, is just spending time in the SERPs. Look at what people are producing, see what kind of intent they are trying to achieve with their article. And 99% of the time, Google gives us exactly what they want anyway. It's just our job to either replicate that and make it better, or find a new angle to rank.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, in maybe not in that direction, we sort of addressed this a little bit, but on the reverse side of the coin on publishing frequency, is there a time when high quality, lower volume is like the wrong idea? Like, how would you describe that scenario, if at
Yeah,
all?
it's my natural instinct is to say never do that. However, there are instances where, publishing quicker with, I'm not going to say low quality content, but lesser quality content is going to be your kind of route to market initially. And that can be 9 times out of 10, it will be either a brand new website that is trying to enter into a market and we're trying to get things into the index. Or the flip side of that is, and this is where some of the bigger authorities might lean into it, is that they may be opening up a new vertical. They want a new subfolder they're trying to rank. They're trying to explore a new topic, a new service. They don't want to invest heavily in like really nice assets. So in that case, you could have a low cost or low risk investment to kind of test the market if you're an authority. But other than that, I'm not a huge proponent for like really low quality. Unless you're a churn and burn kind of SEO guy and it's your own sites, then do whatever you want. But for clients, I definitely would advocate for the best quality you can get for the budget.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm with you there. That literally is probably the only time, but that would make sense to me. If you're like
Yeah.
affiliate site owner, you don't care about churn and burning your site, but
Hmm.
the economics work for you. Great. I do think to your point, like there's levels where you even for big brands, because they are big brands, you can essentially in some ways can still should still be high quality, but you almost the brand itself lifts the quality in a way. Like it's probably just EEAT in some context of like because it came from that name, even though the content's probably like a B if it lifted on a mid name person, it's an A for them. So that probably is like a nice balance and sort of a little bit of what you were talking about there as well.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's a cruel world we play in, Ross. It's a very cruel world.
Cruel to the yeah maybe the next question I have for you to the at least short term. I think the kind of people that are putting out a huge amount of articles, potentially AI application. Obviously this is all the rage right now. It's not uncertain or not unique to you in any ways, but I love that you've clearly resonated with the idea of like better quality, lower volume. But I feel like I caught you with your hand in the fire a little bit, where you have a tweet. We'll share it, but I can just read it out loud for people. I know everyone hates AI applications for SEO, but it's so powerful. Flame emoji. I've just written a 2,500 word article on a complex women's health topic. It's personal, it's factually accurate. The header structure is normal. It took me 3 minutes. I only had to brief the tool. So, Ryan, you're contradicting yourself here. Like,
Yes.
what's your take on this? Yeah, how does AI impact what we're talking about today?
So I'm glad you brought this up because and I'm sure you've seen this as well. Like the context of a tweet is often left out because in some cases it's nice to stir the pot,
Yeah,
like I
yeah.
did. Um, and in other cases, the context has been left out intentionally. So for the tweet that you referenced, I work with predominantly health clients, and I wanted to test how good AI would be at replicating an article that we had already had written by a professional. And it was a very fair comparison. It was here's what we already have ranking. Here's the brief from me to, I think it was ChatGPT. Go and write that for me. And factually, it was exactly the same. The citations were exactly the same. The header structure was slightly different, but again, covered the same topics. And this was a test to say, actually, yes, AI for 99% of use cases, if you're taking it directly from an application and putting it onto your website, it's bad news all day long. But there is a use case, and I am an advocate for this because I want to make things as efficient as possible, right? So if I can get to a stage where I can produce content outlines or content briefs effectively, then why not? Like my my stance on this is AI shouldn't replace good humans. It should support them. And that is how I bring it into my business. That's how I try to incorporate that in my client's business. Is there anywhere we could speed things up to make your lives easier and obviously cheaper to get to a stage where we hand it off to a human to do the right thing?
Nice. I mean, so you based on that, what is that happening already? Are you just exploring that? What are the areas within, you talked about content strategy being a big part of your focus. Let us, how are you doing that today?
So, a big part of it that I'm using AI for is content prompts and content outlines. So,
Okay.
it's a very small use case at the moment, but I am playing and toying with the idea of producing first draft content and letting actual editors strip it out and make it obviously factually accurate, more human, read it more human. But that is obviously balancing the kind of time input of somebody writing it themselves and then somebody editing AI content to see how long it takes to do both.
What's been your experience there so far?
So the output so far is that editing AI seems to be cheaper and more time effective.
Okay.
The downside of AI content is that if you genuinely are an expert in the topic that you're writing about, the AI tool isn't as good at unearthing unique value because it will just use everything that's already available up until I think it's July 2021 or something like that. So it's
Mhm.
very vanilla, very vanilla. So for a high quality piece of content or something that needs to be well researched or well thought out, probably not the route to go down because it will take a long time to edit. If it's a standard topic like how to cut your grass in the winter, you can get to a very good level of content and then have it edited a lot quicker.
It's kind of interesting from the beginning of this conversation. And I actually recently had a thought that sort of goes in directionally to this is like the goal is to, at least in my mind, is not just to publish, it's to win. So it's like, how do you make the argument with AI content? And maybe this is that middle range. It's never that upper range we were just talking about. How do you make the argument that that's ever, and you said it a little bit, but like it's not maybe the best for that, and you have to add expertise to accomplish it. But yeah, how do you make the argument that that's the best? Like you're actually making, you're not just publishing, you're just, are you actually creating the best thing for that? Like how do you jump that crevasse or whatever you gotta say?
I like that word. I like that word.
Yeah.
It's a good question, and I think again this comes back down to I guess the big argument so far is that AI content is inherently bad quality. It's no good for users. It's no good for Google, and we're just contributing to an already unusual space. So I completely understand that argument. And the way that I would position it is if this is this kind of lower to mid funnel content, is what already competes for that term? Are we fighting fire with fire? Are we way off the mark? Is this going to take another 6 months worth of investment when we come back to it? You have to be real. If you want to win and you want to win quickly, you have to be able to get to that stage at least faster than you would manually. But that's not to say that taking out good strategy, good observation, good editing, without that stuff, you will fall flat on your face. So I think the argument is we can get there quickly for sure. We can produce this. We can get to a stage where it is in the hands of the right people. I just I don't feel there's ever a position where you could take AI directly from its initial form and putting it on a website. I can't stand by that.
I agree for sure there. We're definitely not doing any of that. I mean, our current use case is keyword research for the most part, kind
Mhm.
of speeding up some of our processes there. Maybe some creative ideation has been helpful for getting stuck on, yeah, the additive nature and that balance that you just described of, um, I would love to see more studies there of like the difference, but I would guess just the output of, I would love to see a side, maybe there should be some side by side done by someone like you, Ryan, of like, here was the original, here is the edited version. Can you actually tell the difference? I'd I'd still be a little co- uh, cautious that that would be comparable. But obviously, it just that doesn't mean that's going to be the case forever, and it's smart to monitor those things for your clients for sure. So you're actively working with clients that are on board with kind of like testing this in practice.
Yeah, I mean, I the thing with me is I'm very clear on the risk. So if we use AI in any form, any shape or form, we either do one of two things. We either build it into a workflow and try and speed that up. So there is no real risk unless it's to human hours to like fix things or amend certain elements of what AI gives us. So that's one side of it. Or the second side of it is if you work with larger brands, they're not opposed to firing up new properties and testing for the sake of testing. So there is a Reddit thread that I read just Christmas gone where people were launching new websites, fresh domains, or in some cases, age domains, firing out thousands and thousands of articles. They used it as a kind of a aggressive keyword research method to kind of see, okay, so we've launched these 5,000 articles. These 200 are performing. They've got, you know, a good solid chance that if we bring this onto our site, it's going to perform well. So yeah, testing it is definitely something that some clients are open to, but the risk is always open and clear. You know, if we do X, Y, and Z, there is a potential that Google will penalize us or at least punish us for it. Workflow wise, it's more about how do we manage this internal process change, because there is a lot of apprehension about AI taking people's jobs, and it's needs to be delivered and kind of executed in a way that people don't, they're not scared of that.
Makes sense. It's more additive generally.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've seen that a little bit, even like asking our design team to start looking at options. And I mean, it's a natural response from everyone. Everyone has a little nervousness about this. And, but to your point, I think it's only going to continue to augment us, and we have to at least like be open to that augmentation
Yep.
or get left behind. Whether or not it gets there in terms of net new articles, I'm still at least like big brands, I'm a little more pessimistic about. But makes sense overall. Is there anything on this subject we didn't talk about, Ryan, or just on the idea of how often people should publish that you'd share with people, or yeah, what did I miss of anything?
No, I think we covered a lot, and the I think the particular section of people that often get this wrong, or not get it wrong necessarily, but maybe have followed advice and it's come back to bite them, is affiliate site owners or content site owners, where their only concern is publishing more content because they believe that is the only route to success. Now, I completely empathize with people's situations. You know, people don't have money, or in some cases, to invest in assets, links, all that kind of, you know, good chunky stuff that authority sites will. But my advice would be is in terms of publishing frequency is be strategic with your choices so you're not wasting your time up front, because you're going to eventually have to go back and resolve issues 6 months down the line. So by strategic, I mean, look at sites that are like for like to you, not NerdWallet or Bankrate or you know, these huge companies, because that is not the strategy you need to follow. You need to carve out a route where your publishing frequency matches the level of your website, so you're not chasing rankings forever. You can get that immediate 30-day, 45-day boost with traffic in a low comp, low search volume keyword. And that's instant gratification that will keep you going, that will keep you grinding out. So that's the only other thing I would say.
Yeah, I like that. And your final thought there made me think of the point that very often the highest converting keywords are very low search volume, so you can often wade under the watchful eye of the nerd wallets and bank rates by doing that. And I think you made the good point, and I'd emphasize the same of a lot of the benefit, and I think the strong argument for publishing is that you feel it for like a year. I see a lot of case studies where you see the rankings are like, I went from 0 to blank, but it's always the first year. It's always a certain amount. It's like not as sustainable. It's not a 4-year thing. So you got to think about, as long as you accept the fact that this maybe will only stick around for a year and maybe that math works for you. But if you're trying to build a sustainable brand like that, you need to consider that that is going to come down if you publish low quality content. There's a lot of repercussions with doing that. If you're a big business and you publish a ton of volume and that carried your business and you lose 50% of the traffic, there's jobs at risk making that change.
Exactly.
So you got to be smart about these things for sure.
100%.
So Ryan, where should people find you online? What are you up to? Yeah.
I am probably the most busy or most active on LinkedIn and Twitter. So LinkedIn, just Ryan Darani. On Twitter, it's search for Ryan. And yeah, that's where most people can find me. I stay off Facebook and Instagram and all that kind of stuff. So LinkedIn and Twitter, if you want to engage with me or DM me about stuff, then that's where to come and chat.
Awesome. Yeah, Ryan's a great follow on both of those. Definitely highly recommend checking him out there. I was just checking out your avatar. So a little cool illustration. What's the origin story of that?
That was through AI.
Oh wow.
So that, like, I don't know if you had, like, I'm an old man now, so I don't really stay up to date with like what apps people are using, but I saw so many people using this Lenser app, and I was like, let me try it. So I put it through there, and one of them looked half decent, so I kept it.
Nice. Yeah, looks good from far. I've seen the zoomed out version, but nice personality. That'll give people reason to go check out your Twitter. Hopefully get some followers.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming on, Ryan. This was great.
No worries. Thank you for having me. It was great chatting to you. Been a big fan of yours for a long time, Ross. So this has been an absolute honor and a pleasure.
I appreciate it. Yeah, let's do it again sometime soon.
Awesome.